For years, it was spoken about in whispers by devoted television fans. One episode of Married, with Children seemed to vanish without a trace. It had been filmed, edited, and prepared for broadcast, yet audiences never saw it. The network quietly removed it from the schedule, avoided discussing it publicly, and acted as though it had never existed. Unlike ordinary episodes that faded into television history, this one became the subject of endless speculation. Why would a sitcom famous for crude jokes and outrageous humor suddenly go too far? What was so controversial that even the network behind one of television's boldest comedies refused to air it? The mystery centered on an episode titled, "I'll See You in Court." Long before it eventually resurfaced years later, it earned the reputation of being television's lost episode. Its disappearance raised questions that still fascinate fans today. What happened behind the scenes? And why was this single episode considered too risky for American audiences in 1989? To understand the controversy, it's important to remember the television landscape of the late 1980s. Family sitcoms dominated primetime television, presenting idealized households where every misunderstanding was resolved before the closing credits. Programs such as Full House, The Cosby Show, and Family Ties celebrated wholesome family values, teaching gentle lessons while portraying parents as wise role models and children as lovable troublemakers. Then Married, with Children arrived and shattered every expectation. Premiering on the young Fox network in 1987, the sitcom deliberately mocked everything traditional television represented. Instead of a loving father, viewers met Al Bundy, a bitter shoe salesman trapped in a miserable job and constantly reminiscing about his glory days as a high school football star. His wife, Peg Bundy, refused to resemble the hard-working television mothers audiences were accustomed to seeing. She avoided housework whenever possible, loved shopping, and spent much of her time relaxing in front of the television. Their children were no better. Kelly Bundy embraced her reputation for being blissfully unintelligent, while Bud Bundy endlessly chased popularity despite rarely finding success. Together, the Bundys represented a spectacularly dysfunctional family that somehow remained strangely relatable. Rather than presenting role models, the show celebrated flaws, selfishness, laziness, and failure. That refreshing honesty immediately attracted audiences. Instead of ending every episode with an uplifting life lesson, Married, with Children relied on sarcasm, crude jokes, embarrassing situations, and relentless insults. Nobody escaped ridicule. Men, women, children, neighbors, and even the Bundys themselves became targets of the show's humor. It mocked suburban life while exposing frustrations many ordinary working-class Americans secretly recognized. Its popularity exploded almost overnight. Yet success also brought controversy. Religious organizations condemned the series for promoting immoral behavior. Critics labeled it vulgar and irresponsible. Politicians occasionally cited the sitcom as evidence that television standards were declining. Fox executives constantly found themselves negotiating with censors over questionable jokes and storylines. Writers became experts at pushing boundaries without technically crossing them. Double entendres, suggestive dialogue, and outrageous insults were usually tolerated, but everyone understood there were invisible limits. If an episode ventured into territory that felt too realistic or touched subjects audiences considered genuinely disturbing rather than merely offensive, network executives became nervous. That invisible boundary would eventually be crossed. The episode responsible was "I'll See You in Court." At first glance, the story appeared similar to many previous Bundy adventures. Al and Peg attempt to revive their struggling marriage by spending a romantic evening at a cheap motel. Naturally, nothing goes according to plan. Instead of enjoying privacy, they later discover the motel has secretly recorded guests using hidden cameras. The situation quickly becomes even worse. The couple learns that recordings of their intimate evening may have been viewed and possibly distributed without their knowledge or consent. Furious, Al and Peg decide to sue the motel. During the legal battle, they discover another shocking revelation. Their neighbors Steve and Marcy Rhodes had also stayed at the same motel and suffered the same violation of privacy. On paper, the storyline sounded like classic Married, with Children. It mixed humiliation, awkward misunderstandings, courtroom comedy, and the Bundys' endless bad luck. However, beneath the jokes lay something much more serious. Unlike the show's usual sexual innuendo, this episode revolved around hidden surveillance, voyeurism, privacy violations, and consent. These topics were rarely discussed openly on television during the late 1980s. While modern audiences live in an age dominated by security cameras, smartphones, hacked accounts, and online privacy concerns, those issues felt startlingly real and unsettling at the time. Fox executives recognized the danger immediately. The network itself was still relatively new and desperately trying to compete with established broadcasters like ABC, NBC, and CBS. Although Fox proudly marketed itself as younger and edgier than its competitors, it also depended heavily on advertising revenue. Any controversy that frightened sponsors could threaten the network's future. According to reports from behind the scenes, several advertisers became uncomfortable with the episode's subject matter. Associating family products with jokes involving secret recordings of intimate encounters seemed like an unnecessary risk. The concerns weren't limited to comedy. Executives reportedly worried about the legal implications surrounding the storyline. Secretly recording people without consent touched on issues that extended beyond ordinary sitcom humor. Combined with the increasingly tense cultural climate surrounding Married with Children, the episode suddenly looked far more dangerous than entertaining. Instead of publicly canceling the broadcast, Fox quietly made another decision. The episode simply disappeared. There was no official announcement explaining its removal. No promotional campaign acknowledged its existence. It was quietly pulled from the schedule before audiences ever had the opportunity to watch it. For years afterward, fans wondered what had happened. Some believed the episode had never actually been completed. Others assumed the network destroyed it entirely. Rumors spread through fan communities, each offering a different explanation for its mysterious disappearance. In reality, the episode still existed. It remained fully completed but locked away, excluded from reruns, home video releases, and syndication packages. The network essentially treated it as though it had never been produced. Its disappearance became even more significant because it occurred during one of the biggest cultural battles surrounding television. By 1989, Married with Children had become a lightning rod for criticism across America. Parents' groups, conservative organizations, and media watchdogs increasingly viewed the sitcom as evidence that television standards were collapsing. Every controversial joke attracted greater attention than before, placing enormous pressure on Fox executives to prove they could still satisfy advertisers while maintaining the network's rebellious identity. Then came one of the show's most influential critics, Terry Ricalta, a Michigan mother who launched a nationwide boycott campaign after watching an episode she believed promoted immoral values. Rather than merely changing the channel, she contacted the show's advertisers directly, urging them to withdraw their sponsorship. Her campaign gained surprising momentum. Several major companies reportedly responded by pulling advertisements, while newspapers and television news programs covered the growing controversy. What began as one viewer's complaint evolved into a national debate over television morality, censorship, and family entertainment. For Fox, the timing couldn't have been worse. Just as advertiser pressure intensified, executives found themselves reviewing an episode centered on secret videotaping, sexual privacy, and courtroom battles. Whether or not the story was genuinely offensive became almost irrelevant. The real question was far more practical. As public criticism intensified, Fox executives found themselves in an increasingly difficult position. Married with Children had become one of the network's biggest successes, but it had also become its most controversial program. The show's rebellious image attracted millions of loyal viewers. Yet every headline criticizing its content threatened relationships with advertisers who financed the young network. The timing could not have been worse. The now infamous episode, I'll See You in Court, had already been filmed and was scheduled for broadcast when a nationwide boycott campaign against the series began gathering momentum. Executives who once viewed the episode as simply another outrageous Bundy adventure suddenly saw it through a completely different lens. The concern was no longer whether audiences would laugh. The real question became whether advertisers would continue supporting the network after another major controversy. Unlike earlier episodes that relied on crude jokes or exaggerated sexual humor, this story centered on hidden cameras, privacy violations, and non-consensual recording. Even though the episode presented these themes through comedy, executives feared that many viewers would see the subject matter as crossing a line. Quietly and without explanation, Fox removed the episode from its broadcast schedule. Inside the production team, the decision created confusion. For the cast and crew, the episode had seemed perfectly consistent with the show's established style. The actors rehearsed it, the director filmed it, and the writers believed they had simply created another exaggerated Bundy misadventure. No one expected it to disappear forever. Years later, Ed O'Neill, who played Al Bundy, admitted he never understood why this particular episode had been singled out. Throughout the series, Al had delivered countless offensive jokes, insulted customers without mercy, and made crude comments about nearly every aspect of life. Compared to many of those moments, the motel storyline hardly seemed more shocking. Katie Sagal, who portrayed Peg Bundy, reportedly shared a similar opinion. She believed the script perfectly captured the spirit of the series. The idea that Al and Peg would accidentally become victims of a humiliating motel scandal fit their relationship perfectly. Their marriage had always been portrayed as awkward, dysfunctional, and endlessly embarrassing. The motel incident simply pushed those familiar themes into another ridiculous situation. The show's writers were equally surprised. According to later interviews and DVD commentaries from co-creator Michael G. Moy, the script had passed through the normal approval process without raising serious concerns. Only after growing pressure from advertisers and public protests did executives begin re-evaluating its content. What had once appeared acceptable suddenly looked like a legal and public relations nightmare. As the controversy grew, the episode quietly vanished. It wasn't simply